When we're using our Regent accounts, then it all kind of flows together in terms of, especially for teachers and classes that have a required graded Zoom meeting, used to be collaborative course, which I don't have, but it's really sharp for them because we get all kinds of reports, you know, who attended, how long were they actually attending. We get, you know, get the video recording, audio recording, all kinds of stuff, because our Regent accounts are set up to do that. So I think it's pretty slick. It's very helpful to everything that our teachers are doing and our classes are doing. So I'm going to share, because I'm going to honor you all, especially this evening, and come down to just some slides I want to utilize. And I'm going to go over to the slideshow, get this up and running for us. This is, of course, our second Zoom meeting. We're going to have one every time, and I need to synchronize my monitors. Every time we have something new and important coming up, we will take some extra time to talk about it and give you a Q&A opportunity, etc., as well as an opportunity to be able to look at progress, your progress so far, what questions you might have so far, because I hope I've been able to explain that although 897 is structured like a course, it's not a typical course. So it is your a very special kind of a pre-dissertation step for you in your doctoral process. It's your candidacy phase. So literally, when you complete 897 and move on, you are a doctoral candidate, which means you can sign your name, and at the end of it, you can put DMin and then in parenthesis ABD, which means all but dissertation, which has academic value actually. So it's kind of important. So we have it's structured like a class. But as you will no doubt remember, every assignment is simply incomplete until I mark it as complete. And so you don't ever get a grade. They're not graded assignments per se. The course is not graded. The course will be, you'll receive a P, a pass, and that simply means you're ready to move on for your dissertation phase. So I'm going to jump in based upon our schedule to introduce and to talk together about where we, ideally are heading in the next few weeks. So we're starting this week into module number 2, which is one of 2 3-week modules. Most are 2 weeks. I think the last 3 are 1 week, because basically we're focusing on finalizing your proposal when we get to the end. And so module number 2 is focused in 3 weeks on the development and the composition of your summary of the literature. And so there are usually fairly typical questions when we come to this point. It definitely relates to the work you did in 700, but also is different. It's a little more, it's a little more specific, a little more particular in that way. And it's also designed to lead to your final proposal. So it's not, in 700, you were being oriented and produced. You had some practice, essentially practice exercises. So when we get to this far, it's not practice anymore. Now it's official. So it's very important in my mind to be able to take some extra time with you. So that's what we're going to do together tonight. I'm going to flip off my pictures of all of us so I can make sure I see what I'm doing. There are several resources available to you in Canvas. And one of the things I want to do, and I hope it's okay, because you all have been in Canvas now, but I thought I would take some time to actually call up and share my screen, share Canvas with you, and show you and ask you if you have any questions. There are a large number of resources available to you in the 897 course shell. And they go beyond anything you've had before, and they also include some resources that you won't necessarily see in 899. So this is a big resource-heavy experience in 897, and I want you to be able to see what is there for you and the potential usefulness of it. Now, the Doctor of Ministry Handbook is periodically upgraded. It was just recently updated with, I think there was just one policy change. Unless they had to go, sometimes we have to go to the executive VP before we can publish it ourselves. But I try to keep up to date with the handbook. The handbook is our Bible. So faculty and students have to go by the handbook. If there is ever a question, both of us, you and I, would go to the handbook to find the answer to the question. You know, and then if I have a question about what's in the handbook, since Dr. Flynn wrote it, I will contact him and say, okay, you know, can you help me apply this specific idea, etc. There are dissertation guidelines. You did see a lot of that in 700. Frankly, a lot of what you saw in 700, even this particular idea is out of the DMin handbook. Once you have a copy of the DMin handbook, and I recommend you keep a copy of it somewhere attached to your computer, then literally everything you need to know is going to be in that handbook, including dissertation guidelines. Then there is the proposal template. There are 2 copies of a template, and I will actually have one Zoom meeting to just go over the template with you. One is annotated. That's helpful because it has notes explaining everything about the template. And then there's a blank one that you can use for composition. There's a sample dissertation proposal as well. So I think I provide a lot of samples because for me, if I can see an example, I think it helps me to understand it a little bit more. So let me see if I can go over to, okay, I want to make sure I got too much stuff up here. Let's see what this is. Yeah, this is what I need. How come it's not coming up? Okay. Can you all see the Canvas class on your screen?
Yes.
Okay, because sometimes you know, there's a new button now in Zoom called New Share. We had to stop sharing one in order to go back to share the other, but I just wanted to do this very quickly. Now for me, because I'm learning Canvas while you're learning Canvas. And when it comes to a new software, I take my son's advice. My son's kind of a tech guy. He's a pastor. He's my pastor, but he's one of those, you know, he's a 45-year-old tech guy. He grew up with computers. So it says, when you've got something new, just play with it. Go around and click things and see what happens. Because you can't break it. It's not possible to break it. You may get lost in the midst of it, but the only way to do it is just kind of play with it. I'm actually I'm going to stay. I've got it on the student view. I'm going to say there. So for me, one of the main things I have concluded is that everything I need is in modules. So, you know, the syllabus is there. Of course, you're long since past the syllabus. We post now announcements on a regular basis. I'm one of those weird guys that likes to post a video announcement with a PowerPoint presentation. I have found that students find it helpful, useful, so I just do that. It's not a big deal. I use Zoom actually to record video announcements. And the modules, though, has everything we need in the order of the modules, and then beyond that, all of the extra resources. Assignments has some of the same stuff, except it doesn't have all the resources. And it's in the order of assignment groups. And then, of course, discussions are just discussions that are part of the assignments. A Zoom, you can click this rather than go into modules. I found you can click the Zoom link and it take you more quickly to the scheduled meetings for the class, etc. But I wanted to show you under modules. And I'm seeing your view, you're not seeing my view. So there are a lot of slick things that are here for faculty members that I'm not going to show you, but you can't see that the grading feature of Canvas is so much better than it was in Blackboard. The grade center in Canvas is so much better, at least for faculty, because it was always giving us grief. So the ability to grade work, the ability to see grades ongoing, you don't have to worry about, okay, what in the world assignment is this? This doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know if as a student you ever had trouble with the grade center, but it was continually a problem for faculty. So module is ordered in the group of modules, but remember we have multiple weeks. So module 1 was in week 2, rather has had 1 week, week 1 and week 2. So the peer review was week 1, Zoom meeting was week 1, and the discussion board annotated bibliography was week 2. Well, you know that simply because you have the syllabus. And so the summary of the literature is a 3-week module. So again, you're going to have, and by the way, I think I wanted to show you real quickly because I mentioned this to you. Most everything that was in study didn't work at first. And the reason why is that a lot of those files that came over were attached to Blackboard. And they were getting ready to go away, frankly. So we have kind of replaced them. So I'll show you here in a minute where they were old files from PMIN897 when it used to be called DCore 700. And they utilized old Adobe programs that no longer exist, as well as being connected to the Blackboard. So we did something different with those. By the way, sometimes you see this, you can go back here, but sometimes it's quicker for me to just do this. So when it comes to module 2, this is week 1, we have the Zoom meeting. There's not a graded assignment anywhere, but there's not an assignment that I will look at and post a complete for you in week 1 of module 2. So we're week 3. This is the first week of module 2. And then there is actually this should be, no, this is good. This is right. The second week of module 2 is going to address your outline, want you to put together an outline for the summary of the literature. And then the third week will actually be your composition of the summary of the literature. So this is kind of how it works. It's in the order of weeks. The BTH Foundation's also 3 weeks. Project design, once again, only 1. Methodology, module 5, it's only 2. Let me go back, only 2. I'm looking ahead too fast. Module 5, only 2 weeks. Module 6, 1. Module 7, 1, and module 8, 1. But I wanted to show you that under the modules, all the extra resources are now there. So you would just have to keep going. When you're looking at modules, go past module 8. General resources, of course, the handbook, the guidelines, the form that you will use for the mid-course student profile, which is essentially a template that you will fill out. And then there are Turabian resources that are helpful. Turabian basics. One of the things I think I may add to this, there's a quick guide on the Turabian website that I find extremely helpful. I'm going to see if I can add that to this one as well. Writing Center resources. Some of you have had experience with Writing Center. They give some excellent guidelines when it comes to academic writing. Microsoft Word tutorials. I find that students oftentimes are messed up when it comes to problems with their formatting because Microsoft Word is not set up for academic writing. And so the default settings don't work. They're automated settings. For instance, it's going to add an extra line every time you hit the return button. It's going to add 8 spaces, which is actually 2/3 of a line. So it's not perfectly double spaced. It's going to add an extra tab automatically. And so you have to go in and you have to shut off the default settings. Well, I thought, we just assume that everyone knows everything about Microsoft Word until you start to do some really picky writing like you have to do for a dissertation. And so let me just make available some tutorials. A lot of them are videos, some of them are just documents, etc. I made one of the videos myself just to show how to shut off the default settings. And then to set it up the way you need it. You don't need 11 point, you need a 12 point New Times Roman, etc. You have to go in and reset it. If you will do that from the beginning, it's going to be beautiful. You're not going to have a problem. But if you all of a sudden realize, wow, this does not look right. So it's because the Microsoft default settings are still there. So I put a bunch of stuff there. Grammarly resources, I'm still a little bit surprised at how many students maybe haven't downloaded their free copy of Grammarly, or they don't know how to set it up in Microsoft Word for academic writing. And so I thought, let's do a couple of things to make sure. Here's the link for your free version, etc. Here's how it works in Microsoft Word. We can even look at that sometime and show you how to turn on those settings, because your chair and your committee members are going to do it. So you want to do it before they do it, believe me. Human subject review sources, including an application. You have access to the application form. You can't submit it until you're done with 897, but you can look at it and begin to fill in some of the basic. You can take the training course during our summer semester. You don't have to wait till the fall. And then it will give you a certificate of completion at the end that you will turn over to Dr. Flynn when it comes to your application process. Several of the forms, etc. I think the Regent University website for HSR is probably the best place to begin. This is all the proposal resources, the annotated template, template guidelines, the blank template where you can just go in, because the template is set up with Turabian guidelines in place. It's set up with Microsoft Word settings in place. You'd literally, if you went into the blank template and started to compose, you wouldn't have to worry about any formatting issues at all, because those settings are already there. It can be, if you start changing anything in it, then it stops working. The automatic table of contents is there, set up for you. So we'll look at that eventually when we get there. Annotated bibliography samples. Somebody asked me, where is that? It's here under proposal resources. There is also samples of, there's the outline map. There's an example of a standard outline. I actually this is something I give to, last night I had a meeting with 4 new 899 students, and I gave them this, which is data collection and analysis tools, which you don't need until you start to do your project. I thought this is just a PowerPoint presentation. I thought I would put that here for you as well. 2 other things, and real quickly, we'll jump back. PMIN897 is a course that was taught by Dr. Mark Cartledge for years. And Dr. Cartledge he's an Anglican priest. He's back. He's the principal, as they say, of one of the theological schools in England. He's back in England. and basically a professional researcher. So he had an excellent course that I think we decided gave more information than was needed. But I think as a result, we maybe are not giving enough information. We tried to make up for that by adding the sensing text as a required text. But it's still possible to go through 897 and not be entirely clear on how a particular qualitative instrument would work, etc. So this has everything you would ever want to know and a bunch of stuff you don't really care if you know or not. Most of these are PowerPoint presentations, but we also found a way to connect to videos. Now, if you like hearing a professor talk in a British accent, you want to access these. These are fantastic. Mark Hartledge is fantastic. So you want to be able to take a look at these if you want more information about research methodology. So that is there as well. So like every once in a while, I'll just throw something new in because I want to make sure you have everything you need to do your work. But for me, modules is the place to begin because it literally has everything that you will find anywhere else. And it also has some additional resources that you won't find anywhere else. So just very quickly, let me ask you before I change this. How are you guys doing with Canvas? Do you have any questions about Canvas now that we're looking at it that we could talk about together? Anybody? Is it working pretty good for you then?
This is great. It's working okay for me. I mean, I like it. I explore, but it's a lot better than Blackboard. I do like it.
It is a lot better than Blackboard. I can tell you. One of the things is, of course, Canvas now has, I think it's like 62% of the learning management system business with colleges and universities, but the Blackboard wouldn't work on a lot of your tablet devices, etc. You can literally do most of what you need to do in Canvas on your smartphone. So I think that's why it's more popular. You couldn't do that in Blackboard. I'm not that smart to try to do that, but some people are. So let me go back. I'm going to jump back over here to where we were. And if you will forgive me. All right. I lost my cursor. Do you ever do that? You lose your cursor, you move your mouse and nothing is happening. This is an outline of your final proposal. And so most of this you have not seen before. In 700, you didn't see most of this. You had in 700, you were given an example of our final proposal template with only the pieces highlighted in yellow that you had to give attention to. Most of it you did not have to give attention to. So with the final proposal, of course, every piece that is, because that will ultimately be your chapter 1 introduction, they all need to be there. So there are short front sections of the proposal. There's the overview, there's the statement of the problem. And again, when I introduce the template in detail, we will talk about each one. There is the rationale for doing the ministry project section, and there's the limitations and assumptions section. Each of these are just a couple of paragraphs long, maybe a page, maybe a page and a half. In other words, there's not a lot of words there, but they set the stage. They're anticipatory. They're designed to cast vision for your project. The two big sections are the ones that we will spend most of the time on. So the summary of the literature is a report of your research in all relevant scholarly literature in some kind of logical order, which means that you've worked on an outline, and now your outline is being presented in the form of subheadings. It's usually 10 to 12 pages. Dr. Flynn has given me permission to say that if you did fairly good work in 700 and you want to submit a bigger section than that, you can. Back in the old days, we would just say, no, just reduce it to 10 to 12 pages. It's going to be it's introductory, but it should be a report of all of your key ideas in that logical order with an outline. And it should be a report of all your key sources, at least up until now. And so that's what we're going to work on now. Now, I have to tell you, if you're one of those students that did a significant amount of extra work in 700, and we'll work on it together, because what you did in 700 was more general. It was not as specifically aimed at scholarly literature. So you're allowed, if you want to do 20 pages, you can. But I always say, when you have your chair will ask you to reduce it to 10 to 12 pages, because it's the introduction. You don't want to give away chapter 2. You want to save the thunder for chapter 2. So you're just giving enough information to kind of summarize so that people can see, your chair can see, anyone else reading ultimately your dissertation can see where you're going to go when it comes to that kind of research. The BTH, the Biblical, Theological, and Historical Foundations, is the section that is unique to the Doctor of Ministry dissertation. This section is not in a PhD dissertation. And it's based on because the DMin dissertation is the seminary doctoral degree. A PhD, as you know, is a research degree that could be in almost any school in almost any area. The Doctor of Ministry degree is uniquely the seminary doctoral degree. And so it assumes then a seminary education, which includes biblical studies, Christian theology, and church history. And so there is going to be a chapter 3 ultimately, and an introduction to what you want to do in chapter 3 in your proposal that's unique to what we're doing. It again provides a background, kind of a research for setting the stage for your ministry project. It is a rationale, as Dr. Flynn would say, it is a warrant for your ministry project. It sets the stage in the background for your ministry project, as does the summary of the literature. But again, we're dividing up scholarly literature and then literature that is specifically aimed at biblical studies, theological, Christian theology, and church history, which means that that section gives some students the most grief, because it's almost like there are 3 entire sections in one. So the idea is you have to demonstrate your ability to do biblical studies, to do Christian theology, and to do church history, and to draw from them, all 3 of those, what might be relevant, setting the stage for your ministry project. You can do it. I guarantee you can do it. Now, we're not talking about that tonight, but we'll get to it. But you have to think about it. You have to think about it. And we're going to start that process, of course, in module 2. Then there's some short back sections that are anticipatory. And so unless you're real prophetic, you can't say in detail what it is that you're anticipating. You're just this is kind of a wish list of what you hope is going to happen and why it's going to happen, etc. And so you'll have some short, maybe a page again at the end. One section is the methods for analyzing the problem. That deals, of course, with both. It deals with both project design and research methodology, but in an anticipatory kind of a way. It literally will set the stage for chapters 4 and 5, as do the following 2 items as well. There's a section on results and contributions. Well, you don't know what they are. You have not done your work yet. So you're saying what you you are hoping that they will be. What you're anticipating, if all things work out well, what it will be. And then a short section on evaluation of the project. That is to say, how you anticipate analyzing data, and then a summary of the entire proposal, and a proposed timeline, which will not be, when it becomes chapter 1, that won't be there. The proposed timeline is just how you anticipate how long you feel it's going to take you to do your dissertation phase, 899. And nobody's going to hold your feet to the fire, but I know that Dr. Flynn is interested in saying, okay, does this student have a realistic view of how long it will take? Now, when we come to toward the end of the semester, I'll do a separate kind of an optional Zoom meeting that will basically discuss transitioning from 897 to 899, because I want you to have some kind of a realism when it comes to, okay, I'm done with 897, I've got it chaired, now what? And so we'll take some time toward the end of the semester. And then your working bibliography. Of course, your dissertation will have your bibliography. But for when it comes to these individuals, and no doubt your chair with every chapter you submit will ask again for a working bibliography. It just kind of keeps everybody up to date as to what kind of sources you're accessing. So this is literally the outline for your proposal. It ends up being maybe if summary of the literature is 10 to 12 pages, the biblical theological, the BTH foundations, I call it, is 10 to 12 pages. Each one of these is maybe a page. Your working bibliography could be 3 or 4. Usually you will end up with about a 30-page proposal. And believe me, it's not going to take much to have a 30-page proposal. You don't want a 60-page proposal. Now you're starting to write your dissertation. You remember your proposal is going to be chapter 1, introduction. So it's designed to give Dr. Flynn a sense of where you want to go. And then it will be designed to give your chair where you want to go, so he or she can get on board with you and partner with you at that point. So the core of the proposal, the 2 big chunks, are the summary of the literature. That's where we're starting this week. And it will ultimately lead to chapter 2 of the dissertation. And then module 3, also a 3-week module, BTH Foundations, that will lead to chapter 3 in the dissertation. They are probably 2/3 of your proposal. So that's why we will take longer to talk about them and to work on them together. So module 2, week 3, here we are. This is your opportunity to review and organize your research notes. My recommendation to you, because you've been reading, you've been taking notes as you read, you've got a bunch of stuff wherever you put it, maybe on a Word document or maybe a scratch pad or wherever you put it. Now is the time to begin to look at all of your notes and to separate out from your notes what you have drawn from scholarly literature, and we'll review that again just in a moment, and what then might pertain better to either biblical studies or Christian theology or church history. Begin to separate them out, because then you will report them separately. Even though it's all your research, it's all relevant, but you report them separately. So I think now is the time in week 3 for you to take a fresh look. Maybe you're doing some additional reading since we've started in the summer. You found some of the resources that you think might be helpful. You know, add your notes from them as well, and begin to organize them in that way. In week 4, we will look at your outline. You need to be able to then outline your notes that are relevant to the scholarly literature. Outline it with key then major points of your outline that will become the headings, the subheadings of the summary of the literature section of the proposal. And you will keep them when it comes to you unpacking that In chapter 2 of your dissertation, you will keep that outline. So you want to feel pretty good at, okay, this is how I want to organize my notes. When it comes to the summary of the literature, it makes sense to do it in this way. And so we'll take an entire week just to do that. And then in week 5, you will literally then kind of begin to fill it out. So if you have a really good set of notes and you have a really good outline, it's kind of a matter. I remember for one of the students last semester, I said, just put at the top, summary of the literature, and then put your headings as your subheadings that reflect your outline. Have your notes in front of you, just begin to fill it in. There's no question that academic writing is very structured by nature. It's very outline oriented by nature. And some headings, like headings in chapter 4 and chapter 5, are prescribed. And so we know exactly what headings we want you to use. When it comes to the BTH foundations, the headings are given to you already. It's biblical foundation, theological foundation, historical foundation. Those are your 3 headings. So with the summary of the literature, you're creating your outline, and then you're using those main points as headings in how you're going to organize your composition. You will literally be doing it that way in week 5. You've been thinking about it, but you're going to do the composition itself in week 5. And you can either compose inside of the blank template, which means you're never going to have a problem with formatting, or you can compose inside of a separate document, and you can copy it and paste it inside of the template. Now that can create some problems, because when you copy and paste from a Word document, the word formatting that was in that document translates into the new one. So you will always have to go in and fix some things when you do that. I haven't seen very many students actually that used the blank template to compose. Just use it. Don't write outside of it. If you do, you will never have a formatting problem. I think I've only seen one student ever actually try that. So you can compose in a separate document, then you can copy that and paste it, but some of the settings from that other document will transfer into at least in the section where you've done the pasting, not with the whole template, just that section. And it's easy to fix. It's not hard to fix, quite frankly. So that's just one of those things, one of those things. We will, every week, I will address the specifics in a video announcement that includes, the PowerPoint presentation, etc., and go over the details. But let me tell you how I'm going to do week 5. When you send me your draft, we will consider it, okay, the summary of the literature draft. When you send me your draft, I will mark the assignment as complete. And then I will provide you with detailed feedback in the form of an email message, and we will essentially work together on making that your final summary of the literature section, proposal section, which means that when you get to the end of the semester, you won't have very much work left to do. Because you will have your final summary of the literature section, you will have your final BTH Foundation section. And I think for me, if we wait till the end of the semester to start editing, to start reviewing, I don't edit, but I review in detail with you. If we wait till the end of the semester, it can really be frustrating. So I would rather do that as we go. And as a result of that, it's more work for us, but as a result, when you get to the end of the semester, you pretty well know that you're done. And I know that you're done, and I'm ready to send your final proposals on to Dr. Flynn. So let me talk about the outline, because our Zoom meetings are extra, and I'm going to anticipate just a couple of things real quickly. There are 2 ways that we have given you that we recommend for you to develop your outline of your notes from the scholarly literature. One is to use an outline map, which was developed by Dr. Chandler, and she adopted something from Cresswell's book. So you can use the outline map. It's kind of a neat graphic representation of the outline. Or you could just use a standard outline, you know, Roman numeral 1 and some subpoints, Roman numeral 2, and the Roman numerals end up your headings when it comes to your composition. So I wanted to just show you, because I think it's kind of slick. I wanted to show you, in fact, in 700, you probably saw this. The literature review map is and there's a blank one available in resources for you to use, where you just put, of course, your statement of the problem question at the top, and then you think in terms, and this has 3, but it can't have 4, it can't have 5. You want to begin to decide, okay, what will my major headings be? They will be your subheadings under your composition. And so you put, here it is, this is looking for what is orphan care. Remember this dissertation, which was a great one. What is the church's role in orphan care, the Christian response to orphan care? That student decided these 3 are going to really give me an opportunity to say everything I want to say from the scholarly literature. And then there's a variety of things you can do under this, and the more organized you are, the easier it will be to compose your lit summary. This person wanted to list key sources under each one. So it's a matter of just going back and reviewing them as he is writing his lit review. Or you can, some students would rather just have topical indications once again under them. I like the idea of indicating key sources, because it's going to save you a lot of work rather than having to go back and say, now, where was that in my notes that I think might be relevant under this section? If you've already identified them, it just saves you a lot of work when it comes to actually composing your lit summary. So the literature review map gives you a graphic representation of your outline. And once you have it, then you're ready to start writing. I mean, you don't have to wait till week 5 to start writing. You can write earlier if you want. So the summary of the literature in week 5, the main headings again from your outline indicate your subheadings that you're using for your lit summary. They're the same ones, you know, given the fact that we're going to work on what your final, you know, version, your final draft is. That's essentially what you will copy and paste that when you start writing chapter 2, and you'll just unpack that. You'll just, instead of having 10 to 12 pages for a summary, you may have 30 pages for chapter 2, and you don't have to do a lot more other than go into your key sources and unpack them more. And sometimes I will tell a student when they give me the lit summary, you know, you don't need this table, or you don't need this graph, or you don't need this bulleted list. Save all that stuff for chapter 2. That's going to give you more than you need for your summary, for your introduction. And so it's really kind of one is a summary intro, and then chapter 2 is just unpacking all of that in a way that makes sense. So you're going to report the highlights of your research in the relevant scholarly literature, indicating key discipline-specific as well as cross-disciplinary sources. I said something about that, which I noticed already indicated in some of your work that you're doing. A discipline-specific is aimed right directly at a bullseye, but cross-disciplinary could be you deciding, you know, there's something in cultural anthropology. I found some information over here in psychology. You found some ideas that are related kind of on the side that are relevant. And so this is where you can include cross-disciplinary sources as well. 10 to 12 pages, Dr. Flynn would say 10 pages minimum, 10 sources cited minimum. So what you want to do this week, again, is to separate out your research notes and keep the notes from biblical studies, Christian theology, and church history separate, and save them for the next section, the next major section of your proposal. So let me just address that a little bit more, and then I'm going to ask for your questions. What is it that we're looking for again in the summary of the literature, ultimately chapter 2? There are a variety of issues. Again, you all are familiar with the whole discipline of academic reading. academic research, etc. The School of Divinity faculty recently published a book on that, asked several faculty members to contribute to the book that just really dives into this kind of a thing for just graduates. It really was designed for our master's students, but I think it's valuable for everybody. So know the difference between the primary and a secondary source. A primary source usually is an original source. Sometimes it's a source that everyone else quotes. It's considered the most, either the oldest or the most directly relevant to the specific thing you're looking for. Secondary source is a source that comments on the primary source or uses a variety of primary sources. And they're good, but in terms of scholarship, they're not as good as primary sources. So it's helpful to be able to tell the difference when you're looking at a source. There's a difference between scholarly and popular sources. It's not that there's anything wrong with popular sources, but they're designed to unpack a subject in a variety of ways for believers, for Christ followers. So I've published several books and they're all popular. They're all popular. So you wouldn't want to use any of my books as an academic source. Although I had one student that did. I said, "Are you sure you want to do that?" And I guess it was okay for him. But I tend to write in a popular, I call it my Bible study voice. I'll give you this book to use in your small group Bible study kind of a thing, you know. A scholarly source is written in an academic voice. And you can tell there's more footnotes than you would rather look at. You're probably going to have a great bibliography at the end. Those bibliographies are worth their weight in gold. You may have some great helpful indices, and you can tell when you're reading an academic source. And they are, don't ever get an academic book and just open it up and start reading it. That's not going to work. You've got to, because it will take you, you know, Jesus will have come back long before you're done with your research. And so you want to, with an academic book, you want to start with the table of contents. Say, I wonder if this chapter has anything that I could use. And then you're going to go to the index in the back and you're going to look for some specific things, and you will only read the pages that you think are going to be relevant to your research. You're never going to read a whole book or even most of a book, quite frankly. We're used to doing that with popular sources, but you don't do that with academic sources. It just, and your eyes will start to cross and you'll get a headache. It's just not good. So you're going to make a selective use of academic sources. And so ultimately you will, again, note the difference between the sources you use and the summary of the literature, the BTH Foundation. The BTH Foundation can use some popular sources, because when it comes to biblical studies or Christian theology or church history, you will find some well-written popular sources that say it very, very well. And that's where you want to use it. I think I remember looking at Colton's, correct me if I'm wrong, as I'm not making a big point of it, Colton, but I think I remember reading his, looking at his annotated bibliography, and he had some good popular sources in there. Well, they can quite possibly be useful in the BTH Foundation's a section, ultimately chapter 3. But so what you will not use those. Now, sometimes there is an overlap. If I could try to find a good way, because you and I will end up talking about those individually, but sometimes it's confusing. Okay, is this scholarly when it comes to its academic weight? You know, it's if it's a dissertation, it automatically is. If it's a peer-reviewed journal article, it automatically is. If it's an academic monograph, it automatically is. But sometimes you wonder, okay, would this be classified as a scholarly source, or would it be something else? Would it be more biblical studies? And there can be an overlap. Sometimes there is an overlap. And I think when I am reviewing your drafts, I'll be able to see, well, you know, I can see where this would work because of the nature of the writing and the context of the writing. Even though it's more theological, I think it would work under the lit summary. And so sometimes there's an overlap and we have to wrestle with it just a little bit. All scholarly academic sources are peer reviewed. And so dissertations are peer reviewed, journal articles are peer reviewed. In most cases, an academic monograph, you remember again, that's a book that's just focused academic on one subject academically. Most of them are going to be peer reviewed. None of my books are peer reviewed. So again, don't just ignore them completely. They would be just for fun, but they're not relevant to what we're doing. So it's important to wrap our brains around, again, you didn't have to do this so much in PMIN897, but when it comes to your proposal and then especially the dissertation chapters, you really want to try to wrap your brain around that. And when we have questions, when ultimately there will be questions. I remember I had one great student in the spring whose dad had published some really, really good works. He's one of those guys who is quoted by everybody else. But it wasn't peer reviewed. None of his works were peer reviewed. And so we had this conversation. Are they okay even though they're not peer reviewed? Well, let's look at the structure of what he did. Let's look at what his goals were for writing, etc., and decided that they would be okay. And so we can have those discussions. Again, they're kind of relevant to the proposal. They'll be extremely relevant to your dissertation chapters. So it'll be good for us to, if we need to wrestle with something, it'll be good for us to do it now. And that way you will be totally ready to go when it comes to 899. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to get all our faces up on the screen. I see Archbishop Roy. He's joined us in the meantime. Tracy is back in there somewhere. And Gabe is here. Gabe is here with his awesome library. So let me ask you now, when it comes to what we're getting ready to do together with the summary of the literature, do you have any questions? Or, because this is our opportunity then to interact specifically, do you have any other questions when it comes, not our process looking all the way to the end of it, but our process as we are beginning it now? Do you have any questions? Are you running into a problem, maybe an area of confusion, wherever it might be, that we could talk together about while we're here together tonight? Anybody, go ahead, just jump in.
Dr. Asplund, this is Tracy.
Hi, Tracy.
Hi, sorry I'm not on camera. It's been a rough day.
I see the big T, so the T looks good.
Okay. So when we're talking about the summary of the literature, the one that we did in PMIN897, I believe I heard you say that we can probably use a lot of that, but this is slightly different for this one, for this purpose. But the resources that I used in PMIN897, I really like them. But for this particular assignment that we just had, I had offered some new resources. So how many resources do we really need for the summary of the literature? Because I probably have about like 30 something sources.
Well, again, it's quality, not quantity. So Dr. Flynn traditionally has said 10 sources minimum. It's not unusual to see maybe 20 plus.
Okay.
But one of the things, when you look at what you have, just take a fresh look at, would any of this work better in terms of reporting research in biblical studies, Christian theology, or church history? If you think it might work, because that's what I'll do when I'm reading your draft of the lit summary, I will also be asking, would this work better in the next section? You can be asking that question as you go. It may trim down your notes a bit when you ask that question, but that would be my only recommendation.
Yeah, I think some of my sources a couple of them I know would probably work well with the methodology section and eventually, and some would work well with the BTH section. I do kind of see that. I guess for summary literature, I'm just trying to wrap my head around what to include outside of what I've already included in the first one. I thought that one went pretty well.
Well, only if you have found some additional sources since then. It's not uncommon for a doctoral student to tweak their statement of the problem, their research question, which means that some of that doesn't work real well anymore, because it's all designed to support that research research question. But if you did some really great work and most of it is still completely relevant in 700, I would lean on it. And then you will send me a draft. Again, don't expect perfection. Send me a draft in week 5, and then let me provide you. I'll mark the assignment as complete, and then I will provide you with feedback. You remember, both of those sections are a report. They're a report of the research. You're not going to be talking at all about your project. You're not going to be setting the stage for your project. You're going to do that in those preliminary sections, the rationale section, the statement of the problem section. Those preliminary sections are setting the stage. The lit review, lit summary, and the BTH foundations are just a research report only. So if I get any information about or even reference to a research context in those sections, I'll say, you need to save that for one of these other shorter sections, because you're casting vision first, then you're anticipating results last, and you're reporting on research in the middle. So again, that's kind of the, it's kind of the task of keeping all that separate. But I will give you feedback if I have a recommendation to make.
Okay, thank you. I did find a few resources that I said, oh, wow, I didn't catch this one the first time. This is pretty interesting. So, that's good. Okay, I'll do my best.
Of course.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Hi, Dr. Asplund. It's Roy.
Archbishop.
I've got a unique
Maybe problem. I should call you Admiral.
I'll accept either or.
I'm telling you,
both positions.
Roy is a 2-star admiral as well, so I don't know if I should bow or salute.
Neither.
Okay, all right.
Neither, sir. My difficulty is that my documents fall under both BTH and the actual project. For example, when I get into the Summa Theologica by Thomas Aquinas, he's going to be dictating theological elements to the positions in my project of the ordinations. What they do. I've got papal encyclicals that I cited that also fall into both. So I'm running into that problem where I've got a lot of overlap.
Well, it's a good problem though, Roy. Aquinas is a primary source, obviously.
He's definitely a long-winded source.
Primary, he's long-winded. At least you're not having to do anything from Karl Barth. That would be even worse. Original documents are a primary source. So those all work in either place. Sometimes I remember one proposal where somebody was doing something with St. Augustine of Hippo, since there's more than one St. Augustine. And so there was a question of, okay, how do I use him? Well, he's a primary source. He's an academic source. So draw from him with that in mind with your lit summary, but then take specific theological issue that he is addressing that's relevant to you, or maybe use a specific historical example from his story and save them. So you're literally going to use him twice or three times.
Right.
Because of his authority as a historical theologian and his genius as well, you know. So you're going to have some of that with Aquinas, to be sure. And not everyone has dug that deeply into church history, but if you do, you end up discovering that some of these guys you can use multiple times in your work, and they fit in very, very well.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Anyone else? Brother Robinson, how you doing?
Doing good. You got me thinking, and I'm looking at. I made some changes from my 700.
So you're already sorting through your notes, aren't you? I see you down
Yeah,
there.
you had me thinking about some things, so I started looking at some stuff that.
I'm telling you, he just jumped right into it, man. That's
Yeah, if I don't, at my age, I'll forget by tomorrow. So.
well, yeah, no, there's an age factor involved with there too. I hate to Brother Gabe, how you doing?
Coming together pretty good. My sources, I'm like Claude there. I made a few changes, but the most of them is I'm kind of start differentiating between the BTH, like you suggested, and go from there. Some of mine is like raw, they overlap. I'm kind of a church history buff anyway, so
Yeah.
we coming on pretty strong.
And no, that's good, Gabe, because some do overlap, particularly if it's a primary source. Some do overlap.
Yes, sir.
You know, I'm an old Pentecostal, so I'm still going to be calling you brother and sister. I hate to tell you.
Well, I'm Pentecostal as well, so I'm used to that. So no.
Okay, very good. And people say, well, do you think we're in like in a monastery? No, I just grew up calling everybody brother and sister.
That's exactly right.
That's all I know. That's what I know. Brother Michael, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. My 700 is completely different than what I'm proposing now, so I'm starting over, but it's a good thing. Because a lot of the sources that deal with spiritual formation, I think, have a BTH component, because spiritual formation, as you said in my remarks, is more relational, but there's a lot of BTH surrounding that, especially what the Apostle Paul talks about being spiritually formed. So some of my sources may overlap. I am getting some interdisciplinary sources with the psychology. If I froze or not. Can y'all still hear me?
I can still hear you.
Okay, I think I froze.
Your bandwidth is not supporting your video, but it is supporting your audio.
Okay, well, good. Well, there's a psychological component as well that I'm going to touch on. So I'll do some interdisciplinary sources.
Well, and some of our spiritual formation authors, Michael, are academics. So when you start reading very much in Dallas Willard, he was a professional philosopher, as you know, in the University of Southern California. And so he has a lot of academic things to say. Now, he does apply it in practical ways, but he also digs into theory, etc. And you can overlap Dallas Willard to a lesser extent. You can overlap some of the other guys who are really good. I did my DMin at George Fox University here in Portland, which is a Quaker university, where Richard Foster was a local pastor and a teacher. Richard is a smart guy, but he tends to write less academically. then Dallas Willard, less academically than John Ortberg, even though these guys are really, really good. So you will find some overlap. One of the things I found interesting, Michael, is the difference between discipleship and spiritual formation. And that's more of a theoretical issue again. So that kind of an issue would fit into the lit summary and would not, so it doesn't really fit well in the BTH Foundation. So you can extract some of those ideas and have plenty of stuff to go on in the lit summary. Michael's just frozen in a state of awe. I just love that. Sister Gay, how are you doing?
I keep thinking, it says my internet is unstable, so point me, just let me.
I hate that. I hate when the internet is.
Make notes on the literature review.
Well, listen, if you
Yeah.
have questions along the way, you know I'm here for you.
Okay, I will, because I was looking at the literature review map and then pulling in all these different things that I've seen in the literature I read, having to do PTSD, trauma-induced treatment and things like that. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a lot, and I'm gonna have to narrow some down.
Well, it's okay. You know what? I recommend you do more paraphrasing and summarizing in the lit summary in a way that introduces an idea that you're not going to really try to unpack until chapter 2.
Okay.
At least it introduces some key ideas kind of quickly, and then it moves on. And so it's kind of an indicator to you even. So when you start to write chapter 2, you can go back to your introduction and just begin to unpack some of that stuff.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Mr. Colton, you doing okay? I hope that guitar doesn't hit you in the head.
Yeah, me too. That wouldn't feel so good.
No.
Sorry, I had a tab pulled up, so I wasn't sure if y'all could hear me when I hit the space bar. But yeah, so on the literary summary here, I was looking at another dissertation, and from what I could see from theirs, like about 80% of the sources used in their chapter 2, I would say would have been the academic, and then they had some that were more like maybe had application aspects to them. Is that okay to slip a few of those in, or do I need to?
I think it's more okay in chapter 2, Colton, only because now you're going for 30 pages and not for 10 or 12.
Right.
And so we do expect some interaction from you then at that point.
Okay.
And in some cases, you're going to say that in the researcher's view or the author's view, and always use third person, you can interact with some of those sources, and occasionally there will be a point of application that helps you do that interaction. Because you're not going to do any of that in chapters 4 and 5. This is your only chance to do that. And so that definitely does happen in chapter 2. You probably don't have room for that in your summary.
So does this summary that's going to be in the proposal, does that stay in chapter 1 when it turns into the dissertation, or does it just get moved to chapter 2 altogether?
No, it stays in chapter 1. Now, again, I just, with the new 899 guys last night, let me tell you what I told them, because they have to now write chapter 2. Take the summary of the literature from chapter 1, copy it and paste it. Don't change a thing. Don't change the headings. Don't change the footnotes. Copy it and paste it into a fresh document, and then begin to unpack it. And so the introduction will still be the introduction, and it should be just ultimately enough to make people want to read chapter 2. You're not going to, if you give them too much information, they think, well, I don't know why I should read any further. You're giving them some key ideas and some key sources but you're not going to unpack it until chapter 2. But that makes chapter 2 pretty easy then, because you've been doing your research and reading, etc., taking notes. And so the benefit of what you're doing for what will be chapter 1 is that you're just expanding on that in chapter 2.
Yeah, I think what I realized tonight was that most of what I wrote would go into the BTH section at this point.
Well, and that's not uncommon in 700. You know, I just taught 700 for the first time. And because we're pastors, we're teachers, we're theological students, we think in terms of sermon preparation, Bible study preparation. This is the world we live in. So it's not uncommon to just kind of do that easily. And it can be more it can take a little more intentionality to do something that's strictly academic for one of the pieces that's strictly academic. But chapter 2 of your dissertation will establish your credentials essentially as a scholar. And chapter 3 will establish your credentials as a seminary doctoral student.
I appreciate the information.
Yeah. When you add the two together, it makes you an awesome person.
That's the goal.
Hey, Dr. Asplund,
Yes, sir.
I was reading many DMin dissertations, and I've noticed some of them use parenthetical quotes and some use footnotes. Will we have a choice, or we will have to, when we write our dissertation, use footnotes, or is that an option?
No, it's not an option. It is an option when you read Turabian 9th edition. Some of those guidelines will say it can be done one or two of these ways, but it will be up to your school to specify how they want you to do it. So one of the benefits of our annotated template is that it clarifies how we want you to do it. Okay. For instance, even the formatting of headings needs to be clarified by the school. And so we take the time to do that in the annotated. You can even now look at an annotated template from the resources, and it will clarify how we want, but even with footnotes, Turabian will say you can either do a regular Arabic footnote with a period and then a space, or you can do the superscripted number and a space with no period. It's up to your school to tell you how they want you to do it. So the annotated template specifies how we want you to do it.
Okay, because I've read some previous ones like a year or two ago, and they had, from Regent University, they had parenthetical citations, but it's whatever they want us to do.
If you're having to do APA, then you'll have in-text citation. If the School of Divinity made a decision not too long ago to say that our style manual is Turabian 9th edition. And then we will specify where we need to, how we want you to do it. So it's simplified matters, frankly. And I think some of the decisions that were made by the School of Divinity helped us. It made it simpler. So the old Turabian would want you to add a line before a heading. So you had 3 spaces, a heading, and 2. Now everything needs to be double spaced. The old Turabian wanted you to put Arabic numerals on the upper right-hand corner, and the Roman numerals on the upper right, Arabic numerals down at the bottom. Everything now goes at the bottom center. And so what the school did just simplified everything. So I appreciated it for that reason, quite frankly.
Thank you.
So you can take a look even now if you want to at the annotated template, and it will clarify what the School of Divinity is asking for. Makes it easier.
Yeah.
All right, my friends, it's so good to see you tonight. I always enjoy time together. I will provide lots of work, lots of information every week. Before we start into module 3, we'll do this again the very first night or the Tuesday of that first night of the BTH and explore the basis for it and kind of the way to think about it, etc. We'll do that every step along the way. And, you know, we're kind of taking baby steps. I'm sure they seem like giant steps, but they're really baby steps leading us point by point to a really great proposal in the end. So let me pray for you before we head off. It's only 6 o'clock here, so I'm going to have a little bit of supper and we'll be fine. Father, I thank you for these great students. I thank you for how you are working in their lives so wonderfully. I just pray that you will continue to give them peace, give them wisdom, give them grace. I pray that you would lead them by your Spirit, teach them by your Spirit, give them insight as they go along. I thank you just for the grace to wrap our heads around academic structures and guidelines, etc., so that we can see it clearly and simply. And then just be able to go forward and do well. So I pray that your favor would rest upon every one of our students in class, that you would bless each one in a very special way. Bless their families, Father. I pray that your hand will rest upon them, keep them strong, keep them well. Thank you for your provision for every one of these families. I just pray your blessing upon them, and I thank you for it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
God bless you, my friend.